Okay, we are live. So for those listening at home, welcome to the Live from the Sword Coast podcast. My name is Kevin Madison, and this is entry 11 in my ongoing series of videos in the RPG a Day exercise for 2017. If you are tuning in for the first time, which is unlikely if you're watching this series of videos, then the RPG a Day event is a series of questions that are posed for each day of the month of October 2017. And then we answer the questions. Today's question is, which dead game would you like to see reborn? And to be honest, when I first read this question at the beginning of the month, I didn't have a game in mind, but going through this the process of this month and thinking more about the games I play and why I like them and whatever has actually made it an unexpected entry in the dead games answer for me today. So. And this one will be one of the few days where I don't have to provide any qualifying or qualifications for my answer before giving it. So the question is, which dead game would I like to see be reborn? For me, Dungeons and Dragons 4th edition is an easy answer for that. If you are unfamiliar with the this is sort of the redheaded stepchild of the D&D legacy because the fairly dramatic changes to the game to the point where arguably it's not recognizable as, well, that's not true. It is recognizable. It's just that there are some pretty dramatic changes that have been made. So it looks an awful lot different from its predecessors. There is tons of material online that will provide descriptions that give the difference between 4th edition and other editions. There's plenty of critique of the game online as well as recently it seems like there's been some more positive things to say about the game. Now, I don't mean just as a qualifier as well too. I really enjoy D&D 5th edition. I don't see that as being a lesser edition by any means. It just so happens that 4th was my favorite of the editions. I have played all the editions of D&D, so I'm familiar with everything through from, I should say anything from the basic set basically going on. The 1983 basic set was the first role-playing game I received, the big red box, and I played that. So I played AD&D 1st edition, 2nd edition, 3rd, 3.5, Pathfinder, and 5th edition. And just thinking about what I enjoy in a game over the last couple of weeks has really got me thinking more about why I enjoy 4th edition. So all on is the things that I actually enjoyed about 4th edition, or the reason I would say I would like to see it reborn. First off, it's a dead brand. I don't think anyone publishing any material for this. Wizards has stripped most of the material supporting 4th edition from their website, unless you've got an existing subscription, or you're like me and foolishly cancel your subscription to the D&D Insider, then try to get back in, which you can't do anymore. They've pretty much only cut off any existing support, but also made it impossible to access a lot of the earlier materials that they had, like a lot of the electronic Dungeon and Dragon magazines, respectively, which had a lot of 4th edition content in them. So it's a dead brand. I don't think anyone is publishing it from a third party for this partly because there's not, I imagine, not really a market for it necessarily, or at least it's not being supported by the parent company. And secondly, because from what I understand, the license for publishing under 4th edition was a lot more restrictive than the OGL that came with 3rd edition and the new licensing agreement that comes with 5th edition D&D. So it's a dead game, but 4th edition had a bit of and this is a rocky history as well, in the sense that it was not suffering, but it was experiencing live patches as it was being played. As the game was rolled out throughout the different editions, there were new rules and new approaches to the different character classes that were rolled out, and new features. Like when the game just first launched, there was simply, you picked a race, you picked a class, you picked some skills, some powers, and then you were off to the races. In the second Player's Handbook, Player's Handbook 2, they introduced the idea of backgrounds, which added a little bit more backstory to your character and allowed more for more customization. Following the release of the third Player's Handbook, they started releasing these things called themes. and themes were another way of modifying your character at lower levels. Yeah, so there was a lot, and I guess the other thing they did is over the span of the lifespan of the game, they started adding or playing up more other features that were missing. One of the significant changes to the game was that a lot of the powerful non-combat spells were largely relegated to rituals, and rituals were kind of comparatively expensive to use, and they were missing some pretty key rituals in the earlier releases, the first, Player's Handbook 1, Player's Handbook 2, quite late in the life cycle, that they went back and added a bunch of other rituals that really helped flesh out the magical presence. Like, I guess, to provide ways so that the spellcasters could have a more significant presence in the non-combat sessions, in the downtime and whatnot. So by the time that the game actually wrapped and or they pulled the plug on it and they decided to start working on the next edition of the game, it was a significantly different game than it was when it first launched. It was a much more robust game. It was much better tested. Obviously, I mean, there were some, I shouldn't say obviously, for those not unfamiliar, math that went into the original monster manual was pretty much completely changed in terms of how you calculate hit points, how you calculate how much damage monsters do by the time the third monster manual came out. And for whatever reason, I mean, that you can call that sloppy design, but by the time the game was, by that third one came out, they had fixed it, and the pacing of monsters and combat encounters and so forth was really good. Right, as I said, right now this is a dead game. Like no one's publishing anything for it. There's some great online material. I stumbled across a D&D 4th edition wiki recently that has a ton of material. It's not quite as good as what the character generator was, but that serves me quite well. The Roll20 interface for 4th edition is terrific. And from what I understand, the game, when it was initially launched, it was supposed to go along with a similar sort of digital screen. You can see here, this is one of the advertisements from the back of the Player's Handbook, which is advertising online tools. And I believe it's at the back of the monster manual. Maybe I'm wrong there. Nope, there we go. And this is what was being promised when the game came out. Now, there is a fairly extensive backstory as to why those fell apart, and I'm not going to go into that here. You can find that if you do some Google searches online. But the long and the short of it is that the game that we ended up playing was not really the game as they designed it to play. How the game was designed to be played was closer to how a lot of folks play D&D now, which is to say using online tools like Fantasy Battlegrounds or Roll20 or the new, I think it's D&D Beyond, whatever their new proprietary thing is. In terms of why I guess this game would be a good addition is because for all the criticisms that the game has with respect to trying to emulate the flow of video games and the sort of the association that had with the World of Warcraft, to be honest, I didn't really care. If it played like World of Warcraft, the combat in World of Warcraft as a player for it was a lot of fun. There's a lot of fun. In particular, there's a lot of teamwork, and there's a lot of tactics you could play. And the game, D&D 4th edition, had way more tactical depth than what World of Warcraft did. And on top of that, it had a nice, simple, non-combat system that allowed us to, when we played, in retrospect now, it played a lot more like what an indie game plays like, or where we're talking through the narrative and dice rolls are minimal to figure out what the result is for it. So it's been quite a few years since I've steadily run the game, so I could be seeing it through rose-colored glasses. But if there is a thriving OGL scene out there for old school games, I'm not suggesting that 4th edition would have the same level of interest and following that those kind of games would, but I think there's room enough in this hobby for a resurrection of this game in a more, in a version that is closer to what it was when they terminated the game. There's obviously improvements that could be made to the game as well. a cursory Google search will find some great resources that would suggest what those changes might be in terms of making skill challenges and other aspects of the game that were kind of like mini games into a more robust and mechanically present part of the game, as much as what the combat was. But yeah, and I also should say that this opinion is not only from the perspective of the DM, because being a DM in 4th edition was an absolute cinch. It was so easy to improvise monsters, so easy to reskin monsters, to change the level of adventures, pre-published stuff. For instance, I'm recently in a sort of nostalgic fit. I'm running a 10th level adventure, or published at 10th level for 3rd level characters. It required me to do a little bit of math for the monsters, but otherwise it's running perfectly well. It runs exactly the way it would for the 10th level characters, just they're facing appropriate level monsters or encounters. So as a DM, it's a godsend, and I felt that it was a lot easier to just improvise and come up with my own kind of neat combos. I reskinned a bunch of old 1st edition AD&D adventures and ran them as adventures for my players back in the day. We were working our way through the original Oriental Adventures series of modules, for instance. But I've also seen this from the player side too, and I love playing 4th edition. Like, is about combat. I mean, like that D&D, whatever version you're going to be playing, is going to have a significant portion of your game. I know they divide the 3 pillars nowadays: role playing, exploration, role playing, and combat. Combat's really the thing that happens most often at most tables, I think. It's fine if folks and that goes on too, and that is often been the case at my table as well. But combat is a big thing, and I've had more fun as a player in combat in 4th edition than I have in any other edition. What the game could benefit from, though, maybe would be some clearer rules for improvising actions. I think it's easy to do if you've got experience behind the screen on 4th edition, because they give you samples or examples, I should say, of what instantial damage would be at different tiers and so forth. But the inclination, I think, for a lot of players is to look at the powers and then just do whatever's on the powers, rather than necessarily taking advantage of their environment or whatever. And if you take away the mechanical penalty for that, that's what I'd like to see in maybe a revisited version or resurrected version of 4th edition D&D. So anyway, that is my answer for what old dead game I would like to see resurrected. I would love to see a renaissance for 4th edition D&D in the same way that there is for the OGL games, the games that use the Menser, or not the Menser box set, the Moldvay box set as a starting point, or the AD&D 1st edition as the starting point, or AD&D 2nd edition as a starting point for their campaigns. So anyway, that is my answer for day 11. Let's see what is there for tomorrow. Tomorrow's question is going to be, which RPG has the most inspiring interior art? I'll have to think about that. I don't know what I have to say about that, but I'm sure I will figure it out by tomorrow. So if you have any questions or comments about my pitch for the 4th edition Resurrection, please don't hesitate to leave a question or comment below. I would just ask that if your experience with 4th edition was not the same as mine, you know what, I mean, to be honest, a Google search will show me plenty of internet that will tell me how awful this game is. So if you didn't enjoy it as much as I did, I totally understand. That's, I don't want to tell you how to have your fun, but I don't need to necessarily hear that you thought it sucked or you thought it was too wargaming or too wow. So if we could keep the comments to constructive, that would be greatly appreciated. Anyway, I hope at the time of the recording, it is kicking off to the weekend, so I hope you're having a great start to the weekend. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you again hopefully tomorrow.